The morning sun cast long shadows across the gun range as Sarah Martinez walked through the front door of Murphy's Firearms. Her worn jeans and faded t-shirt made her look like any other customer, but there was something different in the way she moved. Each step was calculated, purposeful, like a cat stalking its prey. Behind the counter, 3 men were sharing coffee and war stories. Murphy himself, a gruff ex-Marine with arms like tree trunks, was telling his usual tale about his days in Afghanistan. His 2 employees, Jake and Tommy, hung on every word like it was gospel. "Excuse me," Sarah said quietly, approaching the counter. The men barely glanced her way. Murphy finished his story before acknowledging her presence with a grunt. "Yeah, what do you need, sweetheart?" "I'd like to see your precision rifles," Sarah replied, her voice steady and calm. The 3 men exchanged looks, and Jake let out a snort of laughter. "Precision rifles? Lady, those aren't for weekend hobby shooting. Maybe you want something more suitable? We got some nice pink 22s in the back." Tommy joined in the mockery. "Yeah, or maybe a nice pepper spray. Much safer for a pretty thing like you." Sarah's expression didn't change. "I specifically need a precision rifle. Something with a range of at least 800 meters, preferably with a quality scope." This time, Murphy laughed out loud, slapping his knee. 800 meters? Honey, do you even know how far that is? That's nearly half a mile. You probably can't even see that far without your reading glasses." "I can see just fine," Sarah said, still maintaining her composure. "Now, about those rifles." The bell above the door chimed, and all 4 people turned to see a tall man in military uniform enter. The silver star on his shoulder caught the light, and Murphy immediately straightened up. A brigadier general didn't walk into small-town gun shops every day. "General Morrison, sir," Murphy practically shouted, rushing around the counter. "What an honor. What brings you to our humble establishment?" General Morrison nodded politely, but his attention was focused on something else entirely. His eyes had found Sarah, and more specifically, they had found the small, barely visible mark on her left wrist. It was just a tiny black tattoo, no bigger than a quarter, but to the general it might as well have been a neon sign. The mark was simple, a stylized bird of prey with wings spread wide, diving toward its target. Most people would assume it was just decorative artwork, but General Morrison knew better. He had seen that mark only a handful of times in his 30-year career, and each time it had belonged to someone extraordinary. His face went pale, and he took a step closer to Sarah. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Could I speak with you privately?" The gun shop fell silent. Murphy's mouth hung open, confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Jake and Tommy stopped their snickering, sensing that something important was happening but not understanding what. Sarah turned to face the general, and for just a moment something flickered in her eyes. Recognition. She knew that he knew. "Of course. General," she replied, her casual demeanor never wavering. General Morrison gestured toward a corner of the shop, away from the others. As they walked, he leaned close to her ear and whispered a single phrase. "Black Talon." The effect was immediate. Sarah's posture changed subtly, her civilian mask slipping just enough for the general to see the soldier underneath. Her shoulders squared, her chin lifted slightly, and her eyes sharpened with a focus that could cut glass. Murphy watched this exchange with growing confusion. "General, is everything all right? Do you know this lady?" General Morrison turned back toward the group, his expression grave. "Gentlemen, I believe you owe this woman an apology. You've just been very rude to one of the finest marksmen this country has ever produced." "Marksman?" Jake laughed nervously. "Come on, General, you're pulling our leg. She's just some soccer mom who watched too many action movies." "Soccer mom?" General Morrison's voice carried a warning edge. "This soccer mom holds the record for the longest confirmed kill shot in military history. She has more confirmed eliminations than any sniper currently active in the U.S. Armed Forces. Her nickname, Black Talon, is whispered in intelligence circles from here to Moscow." The color drained from Murphy's face. Tommy took a step backward, suddenly very interested in organizing the ammunition display. Jake's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Sarah remained perfectly still during this revelation, neither confirming nor denying the general's words. But her eyes never left his face, and those who knew how to read such things would have recognized the look of a predator evaluating potential threats. "Now then," General Morrison continued, turning back to Sarah, "I believe you were inquiring about precision rifles. Murphy here carries some excellent models. I'm sure he'd be happy to show you anything you'd like to see. Murphy stumbled over himself to get behind the counter. Yes, absolutely. Whatever you need, ma'am. We have a beautiful Remington 700 with a custom stock, and there's a Barrett M82 in the back if you're looking for something with real stopping power. The Barrett would be acceptable, Sarah said simply. I'll also need 200 rounds of match-grade ammunition and access to a 1,000-meter range for testing. Of course, of course. Murphy was practically sweating now. Anything you need. The range out back goes to 1,200 meters. You can use it as long as you want, free of charge. General Morrison watched this transformation with grim satisfaction. He had seen it before, the moment when people realized they were in the presence of a true professional. It was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. Ma'am, the general said formally, might I ask what brings you out of retirement? It's been, 5 years since you left the service? Sarah finally spoke directly to him, her voice carrying undertones that hadn't been there before. Some situations require specific skill sets, General. Let's just say that certain people have made certain mistakes and now corrections need to be made. The implications of her words hung heavy in the air. General Morrison nodded slowly, understanding more than he wanted to. Will you need any assistance? He asked quietly. Sarah's smile was cold and sharp as a winter morning. I work alone, General. I always have. 18 years earlier, Sarah Martinez had been just another kid from a broken home in rural Montana. Her father had disappeared when she was 12, leaving behind only empty beer bottles and unpaid bills. Her mother worked 3 jobs just to keep their trailer from being repossessed, which meant Sarah spent most of her time alone in the vast wilderness that surrounded their small town. That wilderness became her classroom, and hunger became her teacher. When you have to choose between eating dinner or going hungry, you learn to hunt. When the nearest grocery store is 40 miles away and your mother's car breaks down more often than it runs, you learn to provide for yourself. Sarah's first rifle was a rusty old .22 that belonged to her grandfather, a man who had taught her the basics before dying when she was 14. At 15, Sarah could track a deer through forests so thick that most experienced hunters would give up. She could remain motionless for hours, waiting for the perfect shot. She could calculate wind speed, distance, and trajectory in her head, faster than most people could use a calculator. These weren't party tricks or hobbies. They were survival skills. Her high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Peterson, noticed something special about Sarah during her junior year. While other students struggled with basic mathematics, Sarah excelled at anything involving spatial reasoning and ballistics. She could look at a physics problem involving projectile motion and solve it instinctively without even understanding the formal equations. Have you ever considered the military? Mrs. Peterson asked one afternoon as Sarah sat in her office, discussing college options that seemed impossibly expensive. The military? Sarah had never really thought about it. Her world consisted of the mountains, the forest, and the small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. There are programs, Mrs. Peterson explained. Scholarships, training opportunities. Someone with your unique skill set might find interesting career paths there. That evening, Sarah walked into the woods behind her trailer with her grandfather's rifle. She found a clearing about 300 yards from a lightning-struck pine tree. Taking careful aim, she fired a single shot. The bullet struck exactly where she had intended, carving her initials into the dead wood. She made her decision that night. The Army recruiter who visited their high school the following month was Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, a compact man with intelligent eyes and scars on his hands that told stories he never shared. When Sarah approached his table during the career fair, he was dealing with the usual crowd of teenagers who thought military life was like a video game. I want to be a sniper, Sarah said simply, cutting through the chatter of the other students. Sergeant Rodriguez looked up from his pamphlets, studying her face. That's a pretty specific request. Most kids your age don't even know what that really means. I know what it means, Sarah replied. I know what it takes. Oh, really? Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. Enlighten me. Patience, precision, the ability to make impossible shots under pressure, the mental strength to take a life from a distance and live with the consequences. Her voice was matter-of-fact, without bravado or false toughness. Rodriguez's expression changed. This wasn't some teenager playing soldier. This was someone who understood the weight of what she was asking for. You ever actually shot anything besides targets? He asked, I've been hunting since I was 12. I've never missed a shot that mattered, and I've never taken a shot I wasn't sure of. Sarah met his gaze steadily. I can show you if you want proof. 20 minutes later, they were standing in the field behind the school. Rodriguez had brought a rifle from his vehicle, a standard military M4 with basic sights. He pointed to a fence post about 200 yards away. Hit that post, he said. Sarah examined the rifle, checking the sight alignment and feeling the weight. She had never held this type of weapon before, but guns were guns and physics was physics. She took a shooting position, controlled her breathing, and fired. The bullet struck the fence post dead center. Lucky shot, Rodriguez said, but there was interest in his voice now. Okay. Sarah ejected the spent cartridge and chambered another round. What do you want me to hit next? Rodriguez looked around the field and spotted a metal sign about 350 yards away, partially hidden behind some brush. That sign. The small one, not the big billboard. Sarah found the target through the iron sights, adjusted for the increased distance, and fired. Even from where they stood, they could hear the metallic ping of the bullet striking home. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his cell phone and made a call. Sir, this is Rodriguez in Montana, he said. I think I found someone you need to meet. 3 weeks later, Sarah found herself on a bus to Fort Benning, Georgia, signed up for an accelerated training program that most soldiers didn't even know existed. Her mother had cried when she left, but they both knew this was Sarah's chance at a future that didn't involve struggling to survive in a trailer park. Basic training was designed to break down civilians and build them back up as soldiers. For most recruits, it was the hardest thing they had ever done. For Sarah, who had been essentially living like a survivalist since childhood, it was just a more structured version of what she already knew. While other recruits struggled with the physical demands, Sarah excelled. While others panicked under pressure, she remained calm. While others cracked under the psychological stress, she adapted and overcame. Her drill sergeants noticed her potential immediately. Sergeant Major Williams, a 20-year veteran who had seen every type of recruit imaginable, pulled her aside after her first week. Martinez, he said, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. Are you here to play soldier? Or are you here to become the best damn sniper the Army has ever seen? The best damn sniper, Sergeant Major, Sarah replied without hesitation. Good answer. Because after basic, you're going to Scout Sniper School, and that, recruit, is where the real training begins. Scout Sniper School was where Sarah first heard the term Black Talon. It wasn't an official designation, but rather a nickname given to snipers who achieved something beyond exceptional marksmanship. Black Talons were the ones who could make impossible shots, who could remain undetected in any environment, who could eliminate high-value targets that no one else could reach. In the school's 50-year history, only 7 snipers had ever earned that unofficial title. Sarah was about to become the 8th. The training was brutal, designed to weed out all but the most exceptional candidates. Of the 40 students who started the program with Sarah, only 12 would graduate. Of those 12, only 1 would earn the attention of the Special Operations Command. On her final qualification test, Sarah was required to eliminate 3 targets at distances of 600, 800, and 1,000 meters, respectively. Each target was smaller than a dinner plate. Each shot had to be taken within a 15-second window. Weather conditions included a crosswind of 15 miles per hour. Sarah's first shot hit the 600-meter target in the exact center. Her second shot struck the 800-meter target slightly left of center, but well within the kill zone. For her third shot at 1,000 meters, she had to account for bullet drop, wind drift, and the movement of the target itself. She fired. The bullet traveled for nearly 3 seconds before striking the target. Dead center. Her instructor, a grizzled master sergeant named Collins, lowered his binoculars and shook his head in amazement. In 30 years of training snipers, he said, I have never seen anything like that. That was the day Sarah Martinez stopped being just another recruit and started becoming a legend. After graduating from Scout Sniper School, Sarah expected to be assigned to a regular infantry unit. Instead, she received orders that came with a security clearance level she had never heard of, and a reporting location that didn't officially exist on any map. The facility was hidden deep in the mountains of Colorado, accessible only by helicopter or a treacherous mountain road that required special authorization to travel. No signs marked its presence. No GPS coordinates pointed to its location. Even the pilots who flew there had to follow specific radio beacons rather than visual landmarks. Sarah's new instructor was Colonel Harrison, a man whose personnel file was classified at levels that required presidential approval to access. What she could learn about him came through whispered conversations and overheard fragments. 3 tours in places the government would never acknowledge, decorations that were classified secrets, and a reputation that made hardened Special Forces operators speak his name with reverence. "Welcome to Advanced Strategic Reconnaissance Training," Colonel Harrison said on her first day. "Everything you learned before was kindergarten. This is where you earn your PhD in precision elimination." The program had no official name, no graduation ceremonies, and no published records. Students were known only by numbers, never names. Sarah became student 47. There were only 5 other students in her class, all of them handpicked from the elite units of different military branches. Student 23 was a Marine Force recon veteran who could disappear into any environment like a ghost. Student 31 had been a Navy SEAL with expertise in underwater operations. Student 42 came from Army Special Forces and could speak 7 languages fluently. Student 55 was an Air Force combat controller who could call in airstrikes with pinpoint accuracy. Student 61 was a former Delta Force operator whose psychological profile was deemed too dangerous for standard military operations. Sarah was the youngest by 5 years and the only woman. On her first day, Student 61 made the mistake of suggesting she might be more comfortable in a support role. Support role? Colonel Harrison had overheard the comment. "Student 47, would you like to demonstrate why you're here?" Without a word, Sarah walked to the weapons rack and selected a rifle she had never seen before. It was a custom-built precision instrument that cost more than most people's cars. She examined it for 30 seconds, learning its balance and capabilities. "Targets?" she asked. Colonel Harrison pointed to a series of steel plates positioned at various distances across the training range. The closest was at 400 meters. The farthest was at 200 meters. Each plate was painted with a different symbol, a playing card, a geometric shape or a number. Hit the ace of spades at 800 meters, then the triangle at 1,000 meters, then the number 7 at 200 meters. In that order. You have 90 seconds. Sarah dropped to a prone position and found her targets through the scope. The ace of spades was partially hidden behind a tree branch. The triangle was painted in colors that made it blend with the background rocks. The number 7 was barely visible even through the high-powered optics. She fired 3 shots in 73 seconds. All 3 targets rang like bells as the bullets struck home with perfect precision. Student 61 never questioned her capabilities again. The training that followed was unlike anything Sarah had experienced, even in her accelerated sniper program. Days began at 4 a.m. with physical conditioning that would have challenged Olympic athletes. Mental training included memory exercises, psychological conditioning, and stress resistance techniques that bordered on torture. But the marksmanship training was where Sarah truly excelled. Traditional sniper training focused on shooting from stable positions at known distances under controlled conditions. Advanced strategic reconnaissance training taught students to make impossible shots under impossible circumstances. Sarah learned to hit targets while hanging upside down from a helicopter. She mastered shooting accurately, while being subjected to loud noises, bright lights, and physical discomfort designed to simulate combat stress. She practiced eliminating multiple targets in rapid succession, from distances that pushed the absolute limits of rifle technology. Most challenging of all, she learned to make precision shots while moving. Not just from a moving vehicle, but while running, climbing, or fighting hand-to-hand combat. 3 months into the program, Colonel Harrison introduced the students to their final challenge, the Black Talon test. Only 8 people in military history have passed this test, he explained as they stood on a mountain peak overlooking a valley that stretched for miles. 7 of them are legends in the special operations community. The 8th disappeared into deep cover operations and hasn't been seen since. The test seemed simple on paper. A single target, placed at an unknown distance somewhere in the valley below. The student had to locate the target, calculate the distance and environmental factors, and eliminate it with 1 shot. They had 24 hours to complete the mission, with no support, no communication, and limited supplies. What made it nearly impossible was that the target was smaller than a human head, hidden among thousands of similar objects, and the student had to hike through difficult terrain while avoiding detection by hostile forces, played by the facility's security team. Student 23 attempted the test first. He located the target but miscalculated the wind conditions. His shot missed by inches. Student 31 was discovered by the security team before he could even take a shot. Student 42 found the target and made a perfect shot, but it took him 26 hours, failing the time limit. Students 55 and 61 both missed their targets entirely. Sarah was the last to attempt the test. She spent the first 2 hours studying the valley through binoculars, not looking for the target, but analyzing weather patterns, wind currents, and the movement of the security patrols. She identified 3 possible routes down into the valley and planned contingencies for each. Her descent took 4 hours, moving slowly and carefully to avoid detection. She used natural camouflage and moved only when the security teams were looking elsewhere. Twice, hostile forces passed within 10 feet of her position without knowing she was there. By noon, she had identified 17 potential target locations. Over the next 3 hours, she systematically eliminated 15 of them through careful observation. The remaining 2 required closer investigation. The first location was a decoy. Sarah spent 20 minutes studying it before determining that while it matched the target description, the shadows and wear patterns were wrong. Someone had placed it recently, while the real target would have been weathered by months of exposure. The second location was 1,347 meters away, positioned on a rock outcropping that would require a shot across a deep ravine. Wind conditions were challenging, with different air currents at various elevations creating a complex ballistics problem. Sarah spent an hour calculating the shot. She factored in air density, wind speed at multiple levels, the rotation of the Earth, and even the slight difference in gravity at this elevation. She accounted for the fact that her target was slightly uphill from her position, and that the late afternoon sun would create heat shimmer that could affect her bullet's path. When she was ready, she had been in position for 19 hours and 12 minutes. Sarah controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and gently squeezed the trigger. The bullet traveled for nearly 4 seconds before striking its target with a metallic ring that echoed across the valley. "Colonel," Harrison's voice crackled through her radio exactly 23 hours and 47 minutes after the test had begun. "Congratulations, Student 47. You have just become the 9th person to earn the designation Black Talon." That evening, in a brief ceremony attended only by Colonel Harrison and a general whose name Sarah was never told, she received a small tattoo on her left wrist. The design was simple: a stylized bird of prey with wings spread wide, diving toward its target. "This mark," Colonel Harrison explained, "identifies you as part of an extremely select group. It carries privileges and responsibilities that most soldiers will never understand. It also means that your old life is over." Sarah Martinez, the girl from Montana, officially died in a training accident. "Black Talon is who you are now." The general stepped forward and handed her a new set of identification documents. Her name was now Sarah Chen, born in California, with a completely fabricated but thoroughly documented personal history. "Your first assignment," the general said, "is in 6 months. Until then, you'll undergo specialized training in urban warfare, infiltration techniques, and advanced demolitions. After that, you'll be deployed to locations where the United States officially has no military presence." "What kind of targets?" Sarah asked. The general's smile was cold and humorless. "The kind that keep other countries' leaders awake at night, wondering if someone like you is watching them through a rifle scope." Over the next 6 months, Sarah learned skills that went far beyond marksmanship. She mastered 15 different languages well enough to pass for a native speaker. She studied the architectural plans of government buildings in 37 countries. She memorized the daily routines of political leaders, military commanders, and terrorist organizers whose names appeared in classified intelligence reports. She learned to forge documents, pick locks, disable security systems, and kill PO with her bare hands. She studied acting techniques that would allow her to assume false identities, convincingly enough to fool trained intelligence officers. But most importantly, she learned to think like her targets, to anticipate their movements and reactions, to become so familiar with their patterns that she could predict where they would be and when they would be vulnerable. By the time her training was complete, Sarah Martinez, the hunter from Montana, had become something entirely different. She had. The mission that would make Black Talon a legend began with a phone call at 3:17 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. Sarah had been living under deep cover in Prague for 6 months, working as a freelance translator while monitoring the activities of several Eastern European arms dealers. The voice on the encrypted satellite phone belonged to Control, a handler whose real name Sarah would never know. "Package needs immediate delivery," he said, using the coded language that meant an elimination order had been approved at the highest levels of government. High-value target, maximum security environment, political implications severe if unsuccessful. Sarah was on a plane to Afghanistan within 8 hours. The target was General Konstantin Volkov, a Russian military advisor who was secretly coordinating arms shipments to Taliban forces. Intelligence indicated that Volkov was planning a massive offensive that would include chemical weapons smuggled through his network. Thousands of Allied forces and Afghan civilians would die if he succeeded. The problem was that Volkov never stayed in one place for more than 24 hours, traveled with a security detail of 42 elite Spetsnaz operatives, and operated from fortified compounds that were designed to withstand missile strikes. 3 previous assassination attempts by other agencies had failed spectacularly, resulting in the deaths of 14 operatives and increased security around the target. Previous attempts used teams of 12 to 20 operators, Control explained during Sarah's briefing. Large teams create large footprints. Large footprints get detected. "We're trying something different this time." "How different?" Sarah asked. "You're going in alone." The intelligence package contained everything known about Volkov's current location, a former Soviet military base in the mountains near the Pakistan border. The facility was built into the side of a mountain, with only one road leading to it and concrete walls that were 8 feet thick. Motion sensors, thermal cameras, and patrol schedules meant that approaching undetected was theoretically impossible. Sarah studied the satellite images for 6 hours, memorizing every detail of the compound's layout. She analyzed wind patterns, studied the surrounding terrain, and calculated firing positions from every possible angle. The mathematics were brutal. The closest viable shooting position was 2,347 meters from the target location. At that distance, environmental factors would affect bullet trajectory so dramatically that even the smallest miscalculation would result in a complete miss. But mathematics also revealed an opportunity that previous missions had overlooked. Every morning at exactly 6:15 a.m., General Volkov performed a ritual that his security team considered harmless. He stood on a small balcony overlooking the valley, drinking coffee and checking his messages on a satellite phone. The balcony was protected by bulletproof glass and steel armor plating, but Volkov always opened one small window to enjoy the mountain air. That window represented a target area roughly 18 inches wide and 12 inches tall. For exactly 90 seconds each morning, it was the only part of the compound where Volkov was potentially vulnerable to long-range precision fire. Sarah's insertion point was a village 40 kilometers from the target location. She parachuted in at midnight during a snowstorm, landing in a field that intelligence had confirmed was unused by local farmers. Her equipment consisted of a custom rifle broken down into components that could fit in a hiking backpack, 200 rounds of specially designed ammunition, survival gear for 7 days, and communication equipment that could reach satellites from anywhere on Earth. The hike to her shooting position took 18 hours through terrain that would challenge experienced mountain climbers. Sarah moved only at night, hiding during daylight hours in carefully chosen locations that provided concealment from both ground patrols and aerial surveillance. Her chosen firing position was a narrow cave approximately halfway up a mountain face that required technical climbing skills to reach. The cave was invisible from the valley floor and provided a natural shooting rest that would allow her to remain concealed while taking her shot. Sarah spent 2 days preparing for the shot, accounting for every variable she could identify. She measured wind speed and direction at different times of day, noted how air density changed with temperature, and calculated how the mountain's elevation would affect her bullet's trajectory. She even factored in the rotation of the Earth, which at this distance would cause her bullet to drift slightly to the right. On the morning of the 3rd day, Sarah was in position 90 minutes before Volkov's scheduled appearance. Her rifle was assembled and calibrated, her breathing was controlled, and her mind was focused with laser-like intensity on the task ahead. At 6:13 a.m., movement in the compound indicated that Volkov was approaching the balcony. Sarah could see him through her scope, a tall man in a military uniform speaking animatedly into his phone. His security detail was visible as well, professional soldiers who maintained perfect awareness of their surroundings. At 6:14 a.m. and 30 seconds, Volkov stepped onto the balcony. At 6:15 a.m. exactly, he opened the window. Sarah had 90 seconds to make a shot that would require perfect execution of everything she had learned during years of training. The target was smaller than a dinner plate at nearly a mile and a half distance. Wind conditions were variable, changing direction and speed at different elevations between her position and the target. The angle was extreme, requiring calculations that pushed the limits of ballistic science. She controlled her breathing, found her natural point of aim, and began the slow, steady pressure on the trigger that would release her shot. At exactly 6:15 a.m. and 43 seconds, Sarah fired. The bullet left her rifle at 2,800 feet per second, but by the time it reached its target 6.2 seconds later, it had slowed to approximately 100 feet per second due to air resistance. During its flight, the bullet dropped nearly 40 feet from its initial trajectory and drifted 8 inches to the right due to wind conditions and the Coriolis effect. General Volkov was raising his coffee cup to his lips when the bullet struck him in the center of his forehead. The reaction in the compound was immediate chaos. Security teams rushed to the balcony. Medics attempted unsuccessful resuscitation, and communications officers began frantically calling for backup and air support. Search teams were dispatched to scour the surrounding mountains for the shooter. But Sarah was already gone. She had begun her extraction the moment she fired, disassembling her rifle and packing her gear with practiced efficiency. By the time Volkov's security team had secured the balcony, Sarah was already 200 meters from her shooting position, moving through terrain so difficult that pursuit would be nearly impossible. Her exfiltration took 4 days, hiking through mountain passes and valleys that didn't appear on any maps. She avoided all roads, villages, and known patrol routes. On the second night, a helicopter passed directly overhead, its searchlight sweeping the area where she had taken cover beneath a rock overhang. The crew never saw her. Sarah reached her extraction point, a remote airfield in Pakistan, exactly 73 hours after taking her shot. An unmarked aircraft was waiting, its crew asking no questions about where she had been or what she had done. During the flight back to her base, Sarah learned the full impact of her mission from encrypted communications. General Volkov's death had completely disrupted the arms smuggling network he had been coordinating. 3 major offensive operations were canceled due to lack of equipment and leadership. Intelligence estimates suggested that her single shot had saved between 2,000 and 5,000 lives. But the most significant outcome was the message her success sent to hostile intelligence services around the world. The elimination had been so precise, so professionally executed, and so impossible under the circumstances, that it demonstrated a capability that terrified enemy commanders. Word spread quickly through classified channels that the Americans had deployed a sniper whose abilities exceeded anything previously seen in modern warfare. The shot distance became legendary, growing in retelling until some versions claimed it exceeded 3,000 meters. The conditions became more extreme in each retelling, adding sandstorms, earthquakes, and helicopter attacks that Sarah had supposedly overcome while making her shot. Within 6 months, intelligence intercepts revealed that several terrorist organizations had changed their security protocols specifically because of the Volkov elimination. High-value targets were limiting their exposure to open areas, varying their schedules unpredictably, and installing additional ballistic protection around their Black Talon, one of the most dangerous individuals on Earth, and a weapon that her government would use to eliminate threats that conventional military forces could never touch. Her first target was waiting for her halfway around the world, completely unaware that death was already packing its rifle case. The mission that ended Black Talon's career started like any other. Control's voice on the encrypted line was calm and professional as he delivered what appeared to be a routine elimination order. Target is Dr. Elena Vasquez, research scientist currently working on classified projects in Bogotá, Colombia. Intelligence indicates she's preparing to defect to hostile nations with critical weapons technology. Sarah had eliminated 17 targets in the 3 years since the Volkov mission. Politicians, terrorist leaders, arms dealers, and rogue scientists had all fallen to her rifle. Each mission had been thoroughly documented with evidence of the targets, crimes, and the threat they posed to American interests. This mission felt different from the moment she arrived in Colombia. Dr. Vasquez worked at a research facility disguised as a medical clinic in one of Bogotá's poorest neighborhoods. Instead of the heavily fortified compound Sarah expected, she found a simple building where children with broken bones and elderly people with chronic illnesses came for free treatment. Sarah spent 3 days conducting surveillance, waiting for the right opportunity to eliminate her target. What she observed disturbed her more than any combat situation she had ever faced. Dr. Vasquez was not developing weapons technology. She was developing vaccines and medical treatments for diseases that primarily affected impoverished populations in South America. Sarah watched through her scope as the woman worked 18-hour days, treating patients who couldn't afford medical care anywhere else. On the 4th day, Sarah broke protocol and attempted to contact Control for clarification. Requesting confirmation of target identity and mission parameters, she transmitted on the emergency frequency. Control's response was immediate and sharp. Mission parameters are confirmed. Target has been verified through multiple intelligence sources. Execute as ordered. But Sarah had learned to trust her instincts, and every instinct told her that something was wrong. She decided to conduct her own investigation. Using skills learned during her intelligence training, Sarah accessed the clinic's computer network and discovered Dr. Vasquez's real research. The woman was developing a universal flu vaccine that could prevent pandemic outbreaks in developing countries. Her work was funded by international health organizations and was intended to be distributed freely to nations that couldn't afford expensive medical treatments. More disturbing was what Sarah found when she dug deeper into the mission's background. The elimination order had not come through normal military channels. Instead, it had been requested by a private defense contractor that held patents on existing flu vaccines. Dr. Vasquez's work would make their products obsolete, costing them billions of dollars in potential profits. Sarah realized she was being used as a corporate assassin rather than a military operative protecting national security. That night, she made a decision that violated every protocol of her training. Instead of eliminating Dr. Vasquez, Sarah approached her directly. "Dr. Vasquez," she said, appearing in the clinic after hours when the building was empty. "My name is Sarah Chen, and I work for the United States government. You're in immediate danger." Dr. Vasquez, a small woman in her 50s with graying hair and tired eyes, looked up from her research notes without surprise. "I've been expecting someone like you," she said calmly. "I suppose they've decided my work is too threatening to their profits. You know why I'm here?" "I'm not naive about how the world works," Dr. Vasquez replied. "When you develop treatments that could save millions of lives but cost pharmaceutical companies billions of dollars, you make powerful enemies." Sarah explained what she had discovered about the mission's true origins. Dr. Vasquez listened without interruption, her expression growing sadder but not more surprised. "So what happens now?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "Do you kill me to protect corporate profits, or do you help me save lives?" Sarah made a choice that would destroy everything she had built over the past 5 years. "We're leaving," she said, "right now." Over the next 6 hours, Sarah used her extraction training to get Dr. Vasquez out of Colombia safely. She arranged false documentation, secured transportation, and established a safe house in a country where the doctor could continue her research without interference. But saving Dr. Vasquez was only the beginning of Sarah's problems. When she failed to confirm the target's elimination within the mission timeline, Control attempted to contact her. Sarah ignored all communications, knowing that the moment she explained her actions, she would become a target herself. 3 days later, Sarah received confirmation of her worst fears. Intelligence intercepts revealed that a cleanup team had been dispatched to eliminate both Dr. Vasquez and the rogue operative who had interfered with the mission. Sarah had become a target of the same organization she had served faithfully for years. The next 6 months were the most dangerous of Sarah's life. Using every skill she had learned during her military training, she stayed ahead of assassination teams while gathering evidence of the corruption that had turned her into a corporate weapon. She discovered that the private defense contractor had been using military assets for personal gain for more than 3 years. 12 other elimination missions had been conducted against scientists, journalists, and activists who threatened corporate profits rather than national security. Sarah compiled a comprehensive dossier documenting the illegal activities, including communication records, financial transactions, and mission reports that proved the conspiracy reached high levels of the military and intelligence communities. But when she attempted to deliver this evidence to authorities, Sarah learned that the corruption extended further than she had imagined. Contact attempts with military investigators resulted in immediate responses from the same assassination team she was trying to avoid. The organization that had created Black Talon had decided that Black Talon had become too dangerous to allow to live. Sarah's final attempt to expose the truth came through a journalist named Michael Torres, an investigative reporter with a reputation for handling classified leaks safely. Sarah arranged to meet him in a public location in Mexico City, planning to transfer her evidence and disappear permanently. The meeting was a trap. Sarah arrived at the restaurant to find Torres's body slumped over a table, killed by a single precise shot through the heart. Security cameras had been disabled, witnesses had been cleared from the area, and Sarah realized that her former colleagues had anticipated her move perfectly. As she retreated from the scene, Sarah spotted the sniper who had killed Torres. Through her binoculars, she could see him packing a rifle identical to the one she had used on dozens of missions. The man was someone she had trained with during her advanced strategic reconnaissance program. Student 31 had been sent to kill Black Talon. The confrontation that followed was brief and decisive. Sarah's superior training and experience gave her advantages that her former colleague couldn't overcome. But killing someone she had once considered a brother-in-arms destroyed something fundamental in Sarah's soul. After that night, Sarah understood that she could never go home again. The government she had served faithfully had betrayed her completely. The organization that had trained her to be the perfect weapon had decided to turn that weapon against innocent people for money. Sarah Martinez and Sarah Chen both died that night in Mexico City. The woman who survived had no name, no country, and no allegiance to anything except her own survival. She spent the next year carefully constructing a new identity. Sarah Williams, a widow from Oregon with a background in office management and no military experience. She created a complete history, forged documentation, and established a life so ordinary that no intelligence agency would ever look twice at her. For 4 years, Sarah lived quietly in small towns across the American West, working temporary jobs and maintaining the skills that might keep her alive if her past ever caught up with her. She never stayed in one place longer than 6 months. She never formed relationships that might compromise her security. She never used her real skills unless absolutely necessary. But Sarah had underestimated how thoroughly her former life had changed her. The precision and discipline that made her an exceptional sniper also made her unable to ignore injustice when she encountered it. When she saw corruption, violence, or abuse, she felt compelled to act. Small interventions at first. An abusive husband who mysteriously developed a severe phobia of violence after finding threatening notes that demonstrated intimate knowledge of his daily routine. A corrupt sheriff who suddenly decided to retire after his personal files were anonymously delivered to state investigators. Sarah told herself these actions were necessary for her own security, that allowing injustice to flourish in her presence might draw unwanted attention, but the truth was simpler and more dangerous. Once you've been a weapon capable of eliminating any target anywhere in the world, it's impossible to pretend you're just another ordinary citizen watching. Bad things happen. The Black Talon tattoo on her wrist served as a constant reminder of who she really was underneath her carefully constructed ordinary life. She was a precision instrument designed for a specific purpose, and that purpose hadn't changed just because she no longer served the government that had created her. Sarah Williams might work in small-town offices and rent cheap apartments, but Black Talon was always. Sarah had been living as Sarah Williams in the small Montana town of Cedar Falls for exactly 5 months when the situation that would force her back into action began with a missing teenager named Emma Rodriguez. Emma was 16 years old, an honor student who volunteered at the local animal shelter and had never given her parents a moment of trouble. When she failed to come home from school on a Tuesday afternoon, her family immediately contacted the police. Sheriff Dale Morrison, a lazy man more interested in ticket quotas than actual police work, treated Emma's disappearance as a routine runaway case. Despite her parents' insistence that Emma would never leave voluntarily, Morrison filed a standard missing person report and told the family to wait 48 hours before expecting any real investigation. Sarah first learned about Emma's disappearance while working her temporary job at the town's medical clinic. She was filing insurance paperwork when Maria Rodriguez, Emma's mother, came in seeking treatment for stress-related symptoms. "The police won't listen," Maria said through tears as Sarah processed her paperwork. "They keep saying Emma will come home on her own, but I know something terrible has happened. A mother knows these things." Sarah maintained her cover as a concerned office worker, offering sympathy and tissues while Maria described her daughter's disappearance. But her trained mind was already analyzing details that the local police had missed or ignored. Emma had disappeared between school and home, a route that took her through a section of town where several construction projects were underway. Recent intelligence reports that Sarah monitored through encrypted channels had mentioned increased human trafficking activity in the northwestern United States, particularly targeting young women from small communities with limited law enforcement resources. After Maria left, Sarah spent her lunch break conducting discreet inquiries around town. What she discovered confirmed her worst suspicions. 3 other teenage girls had disappeared from neighboring communities over the past 6 months. All were attractive, intelligent students from stable families. All had vanished during routine activities in broad daylight. All had been dismissed by local law enforcement as voluntary runaways, despite evidence suggesting otherwise. Sarah's investigation led her to Jake Henderson, the foreman overseeing several construction projects in the area. Henderson employed a crew of transient workers who moved from town to town, staying just long enough to complete their contracts before disappearing again. Using surveillance techniques that would have impressed her former intelligence colleagues, Sarah followed Henderson's crew and discovered they were operating far more than a construction business. The crew was part of a sophisticated human trafficking organization that used legitimate construction contracts as cover for their real activities. They identified potential victims in small communities, kidnapped them during carefully planned operations, and transported them to urban markets where they would be sold to buyers who valued young women who wouldn't be missed by overworked law enforcement agencies. Emma Rodriguez was being held in a converted shipping container on a construction site 15 miles outside town. Sarah confirmed this through night reconnaissance that required her to employ skills she hadn't used in 5 years. The container was heavily guarded by 6 armed men who worked in rotating shifts. Emma wasn't alone. Sarah counted at least 4 other young women being held in similar conditions. The entire operation was scheduled to move to a new location within 72 hours, after which the victims would disappear forever into a network that extended across multiple states and international borders. Sarah faced a choice that would determine whether she could continue living her quiet, anonymous life or whether she would have to reveal capabilities that would expose her true identity. The rational choice was to find a way to tip off federal authorities anonymously and hope they could mount a rescue operation before the trafficking ring moved their operation. But Sarah's analysis of the situation revealed several problems with that approach. First, federal agencies would need time to verify her information, coordinate with local authorities, and plan their operation. The trafficking ring would be gone before law enforcement could react. Second, the corrupt relationships between Henderson's organization and local officials meant that any law enforcement inquiry would likely be compromised, giving the traffickers advance warning and time to eliminate evidence, including their victims. Third, the remote location and heavy security meant that any rescue attempt would require specialized tactical capabilities that most federal agents didn't possess. A conventional law enforcement operation would likely result in the deaths of the hostages. Sarah spent 2 sleepless nights weighing her options before accepting the reality that she was the only person in position to save Emma Rodriguez and the other victims. On Thursday evening, Sarah retrieved equipment she had hidden in a storage unit 50 miles away. The rifle was a custom precision instrument that she had acquired through black market channels during her years in hiding. The ammunition was military grade, designed for maximum accuracy at extreme distances. The other gear included night vision equipment, communications devices, and tactical clothing that would allow her to operate invisibly in darkness. Sarah's plan was elegant in its simplicity. She would eliminate the guards systematically, using precision shots from concealed positions that would prevent the survivors from determining where the attacks were coming from. The confusion and fear would allow her to infiltrate the compound, free the hostages, and escape before backup could arrive. The operation began at 2:30 a.m., when Sarah took her first shooting position 800 meters from the target compound. Through her scope, she could see 2 guards patrolling the perimeter, while 4 others remained near the shipping containers. Her first shot eliminated the guard closest to the containers, dropping him silently before his partner could react. Her second shot, taken from a position 200 meters away after a rapid relocation, killed the perimeter guard who had rushed to investigate the first shooting. The remaining guards responded professionally, taking cover and attempting to coordinate their defense through radio communications. But they were dealing with an opponent whose capabilities exceeded their training and experience. Sarah's third and fourth shots came from completely different angles, eliminating 2 more guards within 30 seconds of each other. The survivors, now convinced they were under attack by a large force with superior firepower, made the tactical error of clustering together for mutual protection. Sarah's 5th shot killed both remaining guards with a single bullet that passed through the first target and struck the second. The entire engagement lasted less than 6 minutes. Sarah approached the shipping containers carefully, aware that Henderson's organization might have backup security measures she hadn't detected during her reconnaissance. But the site was secure, and she found 5 terrified young women locked in conditions that violated every principle of human decency. Emma Rodriguez was among them, dehydrated and traumatized but physically unharmed. The other victims were from communities across the region, all matching the profile of intelligent, attractive teenagers whose disappearances had been inadequately investigated by local law enforcement. "Are you police?" Emma asked weakly as Sarah freed her from her restraints. "I'm someone who doesn't believe bad things should happen to good people," Sarah replied, helping Emma to her feet. "We need to get you home." Sarah's extraction plan was complicated by the need to care for 5 traumatized hostages while avoiding detection by law enforcement and potential backup members of Henderson's organization. She used a combination of stolen vehicles and pre-positioned supplies to get the victims to safety while ensuring that her own identity remained concealed. The rescue operation made national news within 24 hours. Federal investigators descended on Cedar Falls to investigate what media reports described as a military-style assault on human traffickers. The precision of the shots and the tactical sophistication of the operation led to speculation about involvement by special forces units or professional mercenaries. Jake Henderson and 12 associates were arrested within a week as federal authorities unraveled a trafficking network that had operated across 6 states. The investigation revealed corruption in local law enforcement agencies and led to criminal charges against officials who had taken money to ignore trafficking activities. But the most significant outcome of the operation was the attention it drew from people who recognized the signature characteristics of Black Talon's work. General Morrison, the same officer who had whispered Sarah's code name in the gun shop, had been following reports of the Cedar Falls incident with professional interest. The shot patterns, tactical approach, and precision execution matched intelligence files he had studied for years. When Sarah walked into Murphy's gun shop 3 days after the rescue operation and asked to examine precision rifles, General Morrison knew exactly who she was and why she needed new EQs there, waiting for the moment when ordinary solutions wouldn't be enough to solve extraordinary problems. That moment was about to arrive, and when it did, Sarah would have to decide whether the risks of revealing herself were worth the lives she might save. The conversation between Sarah and General Morrison continued in the parking lot behind Murphy's gun shop, away from curious ears and security cameras. Morrison's official vehicle, a black SUV with tinted windows, provided privacy for a discussion that would determine the rest of Sarah's life. "The organization that betrayed you has been dismantled," General Morrison said without preamble. "It took 3 years, but every person involved in corrupting military assets for private gain has been identified, prosecuted, and removed from positions of authority." Sarah studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "What about the cleanup teams that were sent after me?" Student 31 was the last one. After Mexico City, the decision was made to end all illegal operations and focus on legitimate oversight. Morrison leaned forward slightly, Sarah, the government wants you back. The government tried to kill me, Sarah replied flatly. A corrupt segment of the government tried to kill you. The legitimate command structure had no knowledge of what was happening until you disappeared and triggered an internal investigation. Morrison pulled out a tablet and showed her classified documents. Every mission you were given through unofficial channels has been reviewed. Dr. Vasquez is alive and well, by the way. Her vaccine has saved an estimated 200,000 lives in the past 4 years. Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. A sense that her actions had mattered for the right reasons. "What exactly are you offering?" she asked. "A new program, officially sanctioned, with congressional oversight and accountability measures that will prevent the kind of corruption you experienced before." Morrison scrolled through additional documents on his tablet. "We've identified 43 legitimate targets around the world who pose direct threats to American lives but operate in locations where conventional military action isn't possible. 43 people who need to die," Sarah said. 43 people who are planning to kill thousands of innocent civilians if they aren't stopped. Morrison's voice carried the weight of someone who had seen intelligence reports that kept him awake at night. Terrorist leaders planning chemical attacks on American cities. Arms dealers supplying weapons to groups that target schools and hospitals. Scientists developing biological weapons for hostile nations. Sarah was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. What about accountability? How do I know this won't become the same corrupt system that tried to use me as a corporate assassin? Morrison smiled grimly and showed her another document. Every target has to be approved by a committee that includes the President, the Secretary of Defense, the Director of National Intelligence, and the chairs of the House and Senate Intelligence Committees. Every mission is reviewed by independent oversight officers. Every elimination must be justified with evidence that would hold up in a court of law if the target were captured instead. And if I refuse? Then you continue living as Sarah Williams, filing insurance paperwork in small Montana towns. Morrison put away his tablet. But we both know that's not who you really are. The Emma Rodriguez situation proved that Black Talon can't stay hidden when innocent people are in danger. Sarah knew he was right. The past week had reminded her of something she had tried to forget during her years in hiding. She was exceptionally good at solving problems that couldn't be solved through conventional means. What about my legal status? Am I still considered a rogue operative? Your record has been officially corrected. All charges related to your disappearance have been dropped. Sarah Chen was declared killed in action during a classified operation. Sarah Martinez never existed in military records. Morrison handed her a new set of identification documents. Meet Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Hayes, Special Operations Officer with a distinguished service record and appropriate security clearances. Sarah examined the documents with a professional eye. They were perfect, down to details that would fool the most sophisticated background checks. The rank comes with the job, Morrison explained. You'll have command authority when working with support personnel, and you'll report directly to a joint task force that answers only to the committee I mentioned. What kind of support personnel? Intelligence analysts, logistics specialists, extraction teams. You'll never work completely alone again unless you choose to. Morrison started the SUV's engine. There's a briefing scheduled for tomorrow morning at Quantico. Your first target is a terrorist financier in Syria who's planning to fund simultaneous attacks on American embassies across the Middle East. Sarah made her decision. I'll need to retrieve some equipment and close out my current identity. Already handled. Your gear has been upgraded and is waiting at Quantico. Sarah Williams will receive a job offer in Portland that requires her to relocate immediately. All her affairs in Cedar Falls will be handled by a professional service. As they drove toward the small regional airport where a military aircraft was waiting, Sarah felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief that she could stop pretending to be someone she wasn't. Apprehension about returning to a world where life and death decisions were made through rifle scopes. Satisfaction that her skills would be used to protect innocent people rather than corporate profits. One more question, Sarah said as they approached the airport. Why me? There have to be other operators with similar capabilities. Morrison's answer was simple and direct. Because in 5 years of looking, we haven't found anyone who comes close to your combination of technical skill, tactical intelligence, and moral judgment. The Volkov shot is still considered impossible by ballistics experts. The Emma Rodriguez rescue, demonstrated problem-solving abilities that go far beyond marksmanship. You're not just a sniper, Sarah. You're a precision instrument for solving problems that threaten national security. The aircraft was a sleek military transport that could reach Virginia in less than 3 hours. As Sarah settled into her seat, she noticed that her new identification included a diplomatic passport and credit cards with unlimited spending authority. During the flight, she reviewed briefing materials for her first official mission. The target was indeed a terrorist financier, but the intelligence package included details that wouldn't have been available during her previous career. Financial records, communication intercepts, and photographic evidence that clearly established the threat posed by allowing this person to continue operating. More importantly, the mission included detailed rules of engagement that specified conditions under which the target could be taken alive for interrogation instead of eliminated. Sarah would have options beyond simply killing her target, and those options might provide intelligence that could prevent future attacks. When the aircraft landed at Quantico, Sarah was met by a team of professionals who treated her with the respect due a senior military officer, rather than a rogue operative being brought in from the cold. Her new command included specialists whose backgrounds were as impressive as her own, people who understood the complexities of operating in environments where failure meant innocent people died. Colonel Hayes, as she would now be known, spent her first week in briefings that covered every aspect of her new role: legal authority, operational procedures, communication protocols, and emergency extraction procedures were all explained in detail that left no room for confusion or misinterpretation. But the most significant change was the support structure that surrounded her missions. Instead of receiving target packages through encrypted communications from anonymous handlers, Sarah would work with intelligence analysts who could provide real-time updates during operations. Instead of planning missions in isolation, she would coordinate with logistics specialists who could provide equipment, transportation, and backup support anywhere in the world. 3 weeks after the incident at Murphy's gun shop, Colonel Sarah Hayes took her first shot as an official military asset. The target was 1,147 meters away, positioned on the balcony of a fortified compound in the Syrian desert. Environmental conditions included sandstorm activity that reduced visibility and crosswinds that required complex ballistic calculations. The shot was perfect, eliminating a terrorist leader whose death prevented coordinated attacks on 5 American embassies and saved an estimated 10 civilian lives. As Sarah packed her equipment after the successful mission, she reflected on how much had changed since she first asked to see precision rifles in a small Montana gun shop. She was no longer Black Talon, the mythical assassin who operated without oversight or accountability. She was Colonel Hayes, a military professional with the resources and authority to protect innocent people from threats that conventional forces couldn't address. The Black Talon tattoo on her wrist was still there, but it no longer represented a secret identity that had to be hidden from the world. It represented a commitment to using exceptional abilities in service of principles worth fighting for. General Morrison had been right about one thing. Sarah could never be just another ordinary citizen filing insurance paperwork in small-town offices. She was a precision instrument designed for a specific purpose, and that purpose was protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. The difference was that now she was doing it with honor, accountability, and the full support of a government that valued her judgment as much as her marksmanship. Black Talon had